Alright, so today we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about box plots on the SHSAT. So first we're going to start off with this question over here, question 75. It's a question from the handbook, which you can find on the New York City DOE website. So, 75. A taxi driver recorded the number of fares each day for 1 month. The box plot displays the data. Based on the box plot, which statement is a correct interpretation of the data? So for this, you need to know a couple of things about box plots. So first, the data on a box plot is really in quarters. So this here is the first quarter. This is the second quarter. This is the third quarter, sorry. And this is the fourth quarter. And let me just label that out so it makes sense. So this is Q1. This is or actually, no, that's wrong. That is wrong, I'm sorry. So this is Q1, this is Q2, and this is Q3. And really that might be hard to understand at first, but what this is basically saying is that Q1, everything here and up to Q1, is the first quarter of data. So this is 25% of the data. Now between Q1 and Q2, that's another quarter. This is another 25% of the data. And between Q2 and Q3, we have another 25%. And once again, you can guess what is here from Q3 to the end. That's another 25% of the data. And it's very interesting because 2 quarters, so we have 25% here and 25% here. That means that if we have 50% just on this side, that means that here falls our median. The median is the number in the middle. In other words, 50% the way through the data. So median is the middle, and that median is represented by Q2. So whichever number falls in this Q2 mark, which here it's a little hard to tell because of my annotations, but here it is number 16. So the median, or Q2, that's pretty big. The median is 16. And now you need to also know that this part, the farthest to the left, this point, 2, we're going to call this our minimum. And we're going to call farthest to the right, this, our maximum. Alright, so we're going to be looking at question 75, an example of a question you might get about box plots. Now, box plots are a very important topic on the exam because they can pretty much ask you anything about them, and there are some basic things you need to know. So first, let's get started with this problem. 75. A taxi driver recorded the number of fares each day for 1 month. The box plot displays the data. Based on the box plots, which statement is a correct interpretation of the data? So first we need to understand a couple of things. A box plot divides our data into quarters. So here is 1 quarter, that's 25%. Here is another quarter, that's another 25%. Here is our third quarter, another 25%. And here's our fourth quarter, another 25%. And you can almost think of it as every vertical line represents a quarter. So this vertical line to this vertical line, and then this vertical line to this vertical line. This to this, and this to this. And they each represent 25% of the data. In other words, if I had amount of data right here, 25% of it would fall in this, and etc. Hopefully that makes sense. And what we do is we have names for certain things. So this over here, this point over here, where the box part of the plot starts, we call that Q1 or quartile 1. Now the line vertically in the middle of the box plot, not necessarily in the middle, but inside the box plot, that's called Q2. And this third line over here, we call Q3. So we have Q1, Q2, Q3. And once again, So to the left, we have our minimum. In other words, smallest number in the data set. Minimum. And we have the largest number to the right, the maximum. And one last thing is that Q2 is directly in the middle of the data sets, and that makes sense. Why, you may ask? It is because we have 25% of the data, or 50% rather, of the data on the right, or on the left here, and then another 25% added up to another 25% is another 50% to the right, or to the right, yes. So just to I guess to clarify that, because that didn't make quite sense, we have 25% and 25% on the left. That adds up to 50%, and we have 25% and 25% on the right, which adds to another 50%. So we have 50% on the left and 50% on the right, which means that Q2 is the median of the data. In other words, the number directly in the center, the middle number. Now, knowing all this, we're going to answer our problem. Based on the box plot, which statement is a correct interpretation of the data? So first A, the data point 2 is an outlier. This is wrong. And you should know that an outlier, you should know the definition of that. An outlier, really, in terms of SHSAT, you need to know that it is very far away from the rest of the data. That's an outlier. And really, the number 2 isn't too far away, even though it's a minimum. We're saying that 25% of the numbers in the whole set fall between 2 and 12. So that doesn't really mean, or doesn't really make me think that 2 is an outlier. It's not that far, because there's 25% of the data just nearby. So we're going to eliminate choice A. Choice B, the mean of the data is 16. This is a trap. The box plots do not tell you anything about mean. Nowhere did I ever mention anything about average, anything about mean. No, there's nothing about mean on a box plot. So whenever you see a choice about mean and it's using only a box plot, no, not it. We're told about the median, not the mean. Next, we have the interquartile range of the data is 30. So this is wrong, and because interquartile range is another way of saying Q3 minus Q1, and that's something you have to memorize. So interquartile means between the quartiles, so between the leftmost quartile, Q1, and the rightmost quartile, Q3. So Q3 minus Q1 is the same here as saying 24 minus 12, and that's 12. And 12 is not equal to 30, so that is not the answer. And by process of elimination, we get that D is the answer, and to clarify, that is because it says on about 25% of the days, there are between 12 and 16 fares. 12 and 16, and that is between Q1 and Q2. So that is 25%, as we said before. That has to be our correct answer.